Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about omnimodal design. And to do that, I have a very special guest with me today, and it's Anne Cantera. I did say your last name right, Cantera, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, I did, because I actually didn't say your last name while we were chatting. I just got so involved in the conversation, and I'm really excited to talk more to Anne today about this omnimodal design stuff. But Anne, first, please introduce yourself to the audience at home.
Hey, everybody. My name is Anne Cantera. I work in AI. I work in design. I work in agents. I've been doing this AI stuff a little bit before the generative, like a year before the generative stuff came up. And right now I'm having the best time doing a lot of experimenting with omnimodal, self-building, generative, all the fun things that are just starting to kind of coalesce. That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
And it's if you love to experiment, this is the episode for you, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this specifically because I was just saying to Anne earlier, I was writing a blog post about AI and my understanding of it at this moment. And one of the things that I find a lot of people doing, but not me in particular, because maybe I have some adversity to it, is the experimentation. I am very much being very, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Reserved, I guess, with my AI usage. Like I use Claude, I use Gemini, and it's like maybe a enhanced search function, so to speak. And sometimes I go further into like coding and stuff like that. But I see lots of other people doing lots of experimentations out there, and I think I find you from the posts that I've been seeing on LinkedIn and professionally, seemingly experimenting the most. So I'm really excited to dive into what you have been doing. And admittedly, let's start with the first question because this is the topic of the show. What the heck is omnimodal design? What is that all about?
So, I mean, we all know multimodal, right? And that's basically when a system can understand or produce more than one mode of interaction, text, voice, images, video, gesture, UI. Omnimodal is when those modes are treated as a continuous experience with the system able to move between them or combine them. I say kind of like design for the moment. What is the perfect modal at the perfect moment based on task, context, and cognitive load? And I get a lot of pushback. A lot of this is sci-fi. A lot of the stuff that was sci-fi at one point, we now have in our homes. So I don't believe in that. I feel like calling something out of sci-fi is like kind of giving up on the fun practice of experimentation and creating things that don't exist or improving things that do. And it's a practice. Is it a practice? It's thinking about how you think. That's all I'm asking for, is thinking about how you design. If you're a UI designer, you might want to dabble in conversation design. If you're a conversation designer, you might want to dabble in UI, because my theory is at this point is that I don't want to say it's all going to collapse, but it's all going to meld, and eventually it'll be sentient enough to know what we need at the moment we need it. And that it sounds like sci-fi, but I think it's coming. I think it's coming. I'm having a great time playing with this stuff. I have a great group of friends who are developers that indulge me and help me. And some of the things that we're working on are not working at all, but we're working on making them work. And it's really just about thinking like, what can we do to pinpoint friction and fix it. If we have voice and chat and adaptive and generative, or a human, or even the static UI, an SMS, an email, if we have all these crayons, why should we color with just one color? And how do we figure out the relay between the perfect modal at the perfect time? Because those relays have to be designed, and they have to work. So I get the pushback, like, what's in production? How is it handling thousands of users? And I don't think we're necessarily there yet. We're still experimenting and enjoying all these new colors that we have to work with.
Hmm. So what I'm getting from some of that, of course, I think is like seeing what traditional product designers are doing right now, which is basically they're sitting in like some canvas, let's call it Figma, it's pretty common, sitting in some canvas and pushing some pixels around and making a UI, right? And that's all they've done for so many years, and that's the tried and true thing. There's frameworks around it, et cetera, et cetera. And what I think you're saying is that there's other ways of interfacing with technology that aren't being explored enough that might be more appropriate. I think one of the examples that I comes to my mind immediately is how I used to call for a taxi or a cab, right? I used to pick up the phone and I used to talk to somebody other end, be like, "Hey, I live at this address. I need to go to JFK." And what happens? I don't get a choice of what car it's in or anything, who's going to be, or no, car shows up and it gets me from point A to point B, a cash transaction, and it's done, right? And now we've kind of obfuscated a little bit with the Ubers and the Lyfts and all that stuff with those, multiple choices. But in reality, the best experience, and maybe my opinion, is to just give me a car that puts me from point A to point B and get all the other fluff out of the way. And if that just means me talking, right, to something that goes, "Hey, I want to go to JFK. Let's do it in 15 minutes." I don't need an interface with buttons necessarily for that. There could be another way of interfacing, right, voice or otherwise, that gets us to that outlook. And it's possible that digital product designers, modern ones, aren't expanding their vision of what's possible. Is that accurate? Is that where you're going with it?
Yeah, and I think it depends on where you work. Like at my last enterprise job, it started to infiltrate, like the regular UX UI designers started having no choice but to start working with the conversation designers. And conversation designers do this kind of thing all the time. Like, you'll start on the website, you can't find the answer you need, you jump onto the chat bot, you talk to the AI, it's not getting you where you need to go. And it's not because the designers want the chatbot to suck. It's because leadership made the roadmap too short and the budget too small. And they just said, well, as long as it does this and this and this, we're going to release it out to the world. So that's a failure. So then they pick up the phone and they get that AI, and then maybe they get a human, and then maybe they get a text message or an email. And so conversation designers think about, already do this. It isn't conceptually new to the practice of conversation design. It's just that when you work in UX, UI, voice, chat, agents, and in customer service where there's humans answering the phone, your lens changes, because you're like, how, if you're in an airport, right, and it's loud and you are in the middle of trying to buy something, you don't want to yell your credit card number or your social in public via voice. And there are a lot of people who are like really bullish on voice, like it's going to take over everything. And I think that's extremely imbalanced. We're visual creatures. If I'm going to shop for furniture, I'm not going to do it via voice. I want big visuals. So I try and say and really stick to being balanced. Like, I started my talk with nothing is dead, everything is just changing, because I hate the whole premise, like this is dead, that's a voice is dead, static UI is dead. Nothing is dead. It's just all combining into something new and hopefully better. But we'll see, because most of the time when we experience something that isn't a great experience, it's not because the design team wants it that way. right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's because the business usually ends up having the last call on things, or, like I said, the timeline's too short or the budget's too small. So, there's a lot of things at play. But if you love to experiment and you're truly like human first, don't you want to provide the humans with the best most optimal interface at the perfect time, to the point where it feels sentient? I feel like if designers who are very human centric would be like, yeah, I do want to try that and play with it and experiment and see where there are friction points where I can bring a remedy that is different than what the current experience offers. Think about how you think. That's kind of my goal. And when I get things figured out with my developers, I'm an open source, open book. I share everything very publicly. So when I have something that I will be able to share with the world and really think it will be a wow moment, I will put it out there in public. And then people will push on it and say, well, how is this holding up in production? And I will say, it's an experiment. It's not in production. Like, we're in these infant stages of this stuff. Can we just embrace and enjoy being discoverers and trailblazers for a little while? Because that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, what I'm seeing as well is this kind of fear, right,
Yeah.
of the experimentation piece, where if it's not directly tied to, some sort of balance sheet, right? They're like, oh, can't do it anymore, right? The R&D department doesn't exist any longer. If it isn't making money, then we're not going to do it, and people are scared of change, right? I mean, that's normal and in all
Mhm.
facets, right? But even things where we want to improve, and even designers that want to improve, or anybody who wants to improve, they're scared of those changes, because if we make the wrong change, it's going to negatively affect the bottom line. So they're going to be very conservative, which is the word I was looking for earlier, about making those changes, right? They're like, oh, I don't know if we should do voice or if we should do agents. And it's really interesting, I think, about how um, this agentic kind of experience has taken off about all this change, because what we're seeing is more shoehorning into existing interfaces, as opposed to actually adapting the interface to the new way of doing things, right? And
Mhm.
people are wondering, why isn't it landing? We've adopted AI, but you didn't. You just
Mhm.
shoved it in,
Yeah.
right, in a place that, like, an AI sized hole, and going, yeah, okay, we'll just go ahead and shove it in there, when meanwhile you didn't look at the experience holistically and say, where does it actually make sense?
You didn't start with the problem. You
Right.
started with the, hammer looking for a nail. Yeah, that's happening everywhere. It's epidemic levels. It's not working. Everybody's sort of seeing that it's not working and then blaming the technology.
Right. Right. So now another thing I want to mention as well, because you mentioned the conversation design, and I'm
Mhm.
seeing on LinkedIn conversational designers, UX writers, basically content designers overall, and I'm seeing layoffs, and I don't understand. Because from my perspective, with the amount of AI and chatting that's happening, I've mentioned on the show prior that my mother uses ChatGPT very more often now than probably certainly before. If the experience is largely chatting, right, where you're having a conversation and getting things done through that conversation, wouldn't you believe that conversational designers should be at a like premium, as
Well,
opposed to them being just kind of removed? What is
no,
your thoughts?
it's very different. So the content designers are not the same,
Okay.
even though they write. And what's wild with conversation designers, it's a spectrum of skills. Every company, they need a different set of skills. So
Mm,
the more technical conversation designers like myself, the ones who will write like architectural flows and understand APIs and the cost behind APIs and just are able to do coding. It's different than just writing copy.
hmm.
So a lot of those people who wrote copy and they're conversation designers who just wrote copy for deterministic flows for years,
Right.
they're having a little bit of a struggle. But the conversation designers who know how to use the enterprise software like the Cognigies of the world and the dialogue flows, I mean, I get recruited for jobs like that. I hate to say this while people are struggling, but a lot, like 3 to 5 times a week. So, but what I have been doing is reaching out to content designers and UX writers and saying, go to Conversation Design Institute, get certified, take some classes. It's not the same, but it's in your wheelhouse, and there are a ton of jobs. The problem is they want people with tons of experience, and there just aren't a lot of us.
Right.
So they have to start opening those, and there are a handful of companies who are opening like those associate conversation design jobs, because there just is not enough to go around. So what's the next step? It's like, all right, we have to bring in some juniors and train them. So yeah, the technical conversation designer who understands agents, multi-agent systems, swarms, isn't afraid to do design engineering. I think there's plenty of work for them for now, but it's going to evolve again. And I really think that at some point, the sentient, it's not really sentient, but the experiences that feel sentient, that I think of it like as a butler who brings you what you need before you even need it. Like, I really hope that companies will pay for that, but we'll see. There's the job market right now, the way everything is going, I tell people all the time, when it comes to AI, the most valuable skill is knowing what to pay attention to.
Yes.
And what I see a lot of designers paying attention to is using AI in their workflows, but not building AI products. So anybody who will listen, I'm like, if you're a UX UI person, start learning this conversation design fundamentals and agents. And because it's what's wild is the agentic stuff, a lot of the lessons you see being taught around agentics are rooted in conversation design. And I have to do a lot of biting my tongue, like, oh, you're posting about this like it's new. It's not, it's new to you, but this is foundational conversation design work. So getting acquainted with all that is why I built voiceofai.io is my free website for designers looking to get their feet wet in AI product building, because using AI in your workflow is something you can figure out to some degree on your own, but it's very tool driven. It's not, and then there's the enterprise skills versus everything else. So it is a lot to unpack. So I built that website from, for years, I had a Google Drive link that I shared with everybody, and it had like papers and classes and infographics and all tables and all kinds of things that taught AI product building. And then I just finally built it into a website and put it out there, and thousands of people have been going to it. So hopefully it's helping some people just kind of get their feet wet in the early conversation design and context design and agents and evals and all those things that everybody kind of you see talking about. I do think people are getting hired. I saw a job for an AI eval specialist in New York City. The starting salary was $600,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, 600 to 800. I referred it to somebody that I knew who has been doing this stuff for a really long time. Those AI ML guys, right? Like, they're like, this AI stuff isn't new to them. They've been, at it for 20 plus years. So, no, it's I feel like there's two types of people. I always joke around and say there's two types of people. There's crispy chocolate chip cookie people and soft chocolate chip cookie people. And now I feel like there are people thriving in change, loving the chaos, and people who are absolutely paralyzed and miserable. And the people who are scared and uncomfortable and worried, I try and build for them. So it's like, what? Guess what? You can upskill. You don't have to pay $6,000 for a Maven class. Start here. It's free. I don't even take your email address. I do webinars. My featured section of my LinkedIn is packed with goodies. Like, I just think it's really important that we all kind of teach each other as inexpensively as possible, because the community, I feel like, is in crisis. And I don't think it's right to prey on people in crisis, especially people who've been laid off for months and applied to 2,000 jobs and can't get anywhere. They're not paying for your $2,000, $4,000, $6,000 class.
Mm-hmm.
If they're in crisis, they're not paying for that. So I just think it's on all of us to be good citizens of the design community and help each other learn and upskill the best we can while still putting food on our tables, but also not taking advantage. So, and I get pushback on that all the time, but I don't see why anybody would push back on trying to help a whole community who is in the middle of probably, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, the biggest shift since the internet.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the other thing to keep in mind, of course, I'll thank you for the all the info that's available out there, the things that you provide to these folks. The thing that I am thinking about in what you were saying, though, is the amount of information overload, right? Yeah. I feel even recognizing that from the work that I've done in design systems for a really long time and looking at how omnimodal things are becoming potentially, if you really want to have good experiences, it really makes a lot of sense to move the idea of a consistent experience into a conversation such that you can influence that conversation to also be consistent and have that same voice and tone and feeling of being in a financial institution or an educational institution, having a different way of going about that stuff. So I see the benefit of it, but what I think you've picked up on is there is a petrification that I have because I kind of don't know where to start. Like, I've been following the eval stuff, certainly. I've been following Paz Perez because, again, I think model behavior design is huge, right? I've obviously been following you for a little bit as well from seeing you recently. And with all of that going on, it's just like, goodness, where could I even start? Like, I actually tried to reach out to some folks and try to grab this idea of, okay, if I'm interested in this model behavior stuff as an example, right, which I think is really interesting, where could I potentially start in there? And I get a lot of like hand wavy stuff, and I'm not so good with the hand wavy. I'm much more with the, okay, here's step one, you do this, and step two, and I know, or I shouldn't say I know, I have a feeling what you're going to say, just from what I've heard from you so far, is we're all experimenting, right?
Well, yeah.
Is that part of it? But I mean, if you have something concrete, I'd love to hear about what your thoughts on that are.
One of my one-liners, and I'm starting to accumulate a lot of them, is ask the AI about the AI.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite prompts is, I want to learn about X. I want you to build me a curriculum so I can teach it to myself on like a 6th grade level, right? Like, because I like to start at the bottom, right? And then do a quick scan. Mm-hmm. Ask me as many questions as you need to put this together for me.
Yeah.
And I love when it comes back with questions, and then I mean, 6th grade level is like, a lot of times I'll do that with white papers that like make me want to hurt myself when I look at them. I'm like, oh God, who wrote this, right? How did people write those before it? Like, they're rough for me. I'm a visual person.
Same.
White papers are so I will take a white paper and say, explain this to me on the 6th grade level. And then I'm like, oh, all right, I understand the basics of this. Let's bump it up. Explain it to me on a 10th grade level. And then on a college level, and then incrementally, because one of the things I like on a 6th grade level or even 8th grade level, it's breaking it down so simply that I can decide very quickly if I'm interested in pursuing this or not. Mm-hmm. Right. So I always start at that super simple level and then decide, oh, I don't care about this, or, oh, I care about this very much. Let's keep going. Mm-hmm. Right. And that way I'm not taking a ton of time to figure out whether or not I want to put time into this thing or not. So that's one of the things that I do all the time to sort of figure out what to pay attention to. Right. A lot of people pay too much attention to tools. Right. Yes. Like, so to me, like, I'm not a lovable person. I'm a spec-driven design and development person. And I learned spec-driven work from being around really, really amazing developers. So when I see people post things like, My design team got in trouble for using up their tokens that were supposed to last till Friday, but we used them up by Tuesday. And I say, well, are you doing spec driven design or are you just prompting? And then I go, we're just prompting. I'm like, your leadership gave you a Ferrari and you don't have a driver's license. These are skills that need to be learned. Like just learning spec driven design and development, it's a skill set. And nobody really seems, leadership doesn't really seem to be teaching it and then handing the designers these tools. And it's all very, very tool driven. People fall in love with tools, but it's really more about process and starting with the problem and having, with this job market, it's really hard to push back on leadership when they say sprinkle some AI on it.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I literally have a t-shirt. I'll wear it on the 25th that says sprinkle some AI on it is not an AI strategy, because that has been sort of the mantra of leadership for the last few years. And we're seeing that it just makes a mess when you just bolt things on with minimal research, no budget, short timeline. And they're just trying to kind of, save a few bucks by having a chat bot that will handle a couple things that they don't want to hit the phone system. Right. And then people, when people can say anything, they will say anything. And if your chatbot or your voice agent isn't prepared for that, you create emotional debt, which is something that I've been trying to teach to leadership. So emotional debt is when you use something consistently for 2 years, it never lets you down, and then all of a sudden it lets you down, and getting it fixed takes days or weeks and a lot of stress. So like trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. So I think we're going to hear a lot of about around trust design, because people don't trust anything right now. It feels like there. So I just think we're on the bottom side or the last bits of things being handled really poorly with the whole sprinkle some AI on it. And hopefully like everything is going to kind of burn, and then like, a forest burns and then it grows back. And so I'm hoping we're going to start to see some baby, like, shoots start to come out of the ground where companies start handling this more thoughtfully and holistically and start with the problem instead of sprinkle some AI on it. Because I think the biggest misconception leadership has is it's cheap, it's easy, and it's set it and forget it. Those are the three big mistakes I think leadership is making across the board.
When you were just talking about the fire that's potentially happening and coming from the ashes with a little seedling, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Web 1.0, right? Where basically what you saw back then was literally just greenfield. I don't know what the hell to do with this stuff on the web. I'm just going to BG color here, and I'm going to MySpace this over here, and dancing cat GIF there, and see kind of what sticks, right? And out of those, that absolute dumpster fire that Web 1.0 was, you got some great best practices and expectations and meeting user needs that came out of that we learned over that time. And I would love to think that's hopefully happening again, where this is a situation where we're just literally throwing AI against the wall, seeing what sticks, and finding out, okay, that doesn't stick. And what I think is maybe what's also so challenging about this is I think for Web 1.0, it was a slow burn, right? It was just kind of a slow burn. It happened for a really long time. With AI, it kind of feels like napalm. It's just like it's this big explosion and it's all in your face, and you kind of we're still haven't gotten to a point where the dust is settling yet. And we can't see what that looks like, but some of us optimists, I would say, have hope that dust will settle and we will get good experiences from there. And I think that's effectively what you're saying in the experimentation piece. Are you able to share some of the experiments that you've had that are, let's say, promising, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I came up with, you know what? I'd love to dig into it with you like offline.
Okay.
So I know a lot of design system folks are working on like the agentic layer of their design
Sure.
systems. There's another layer coming after that that pertains to self-building interfaces, which everybody thinks is complete bullshit, but I think we're going to get there.
Yeah.
If not the whole page, at least components of the page, especially around shopping. Like there's different types of shoppers, personas. And like I'm a bargain shopper. I'll admit I love thrift stores and coupons and all the things. And if Amazon knew that about me, there are probably parts of that web experience they would feed to me that they wouldn't feed to my husband, who doesn't look at prices, who just wants to get in and get out and get it in his hand. So I think there's exciting things happening there. One of the things that I'm working on is queryable forms.
Okay.
Like there's big scary forms in this world,
Yes.
right? Applying visas and it's like you're in you have full context. You're literally in the form. Why should I leave this form to go here, there, and everywhere to figure out how to fill in this one little section?
Right.
The form should be informing me. So that's something fun that I've been working on. And one of the other things that I really love is the chat interface as an extractive tool, in the sense of, especially on mobile, filling out forms on mobile, it's like really fiddly and tiny and annoying. And I've actually seen one company do their onboarding and through a chat interface on mobile, which was mind-blowingly good. So I think we're starting to see little bits of this stuff live out in the world. But yeah, the big shocker of the week was when I announced I started a job, and after only 7 months of working, opening my consultancy, and my consultancy is still open, but I said yes to this director position because the founder said, you are going to be able to experiment. We are going to try and build some of these cool things that, it might only be a little sprinkle of, or I guess I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, sprinkle of AI. That's definitely.
Yeah, not a sprinkle of AI, but maybe not a giant omnimodal experience, but maybe adding some omnimodal experience where it makes sense. And I think the moms of the world understand and appreciate the need of, you're in the middle of a voice experience and the baby wakes up and starts screaming, or the baby falls asleep and you're trying to grocery shop, or you're trying to do something via voice and you're like, I don't want to do this via voice anymore. The baby just fell asleep. I need to go back to chat, right? It shouldn't be, it shouldn't always be automatic. It should be something that you can toggle. Like if I want to toggle between voice and chat, I should be able to do that and do it hands-free.
Right.
Because the beauty of voice is you're in the car, or you're giving the baby a bath, or, you're on a walk with the dog. Like to be able to go back and forth based on your personal moment in time and your need. And we can't even skip over accessibility. No. Everything should be accessible to everybody at this point. Eventually there should be absolutely no excuse for anybody to have to struggle with their accessibility needs with AI. I think it's one of the best things that AI can offer is providing that user what they need the way they need it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with you. And this is the time, right? Now that you have the robots being able to grab all the information, why not make it useful to everybody, right? And I think that's huge. In fact, one of the projects that I released this week publicly is this thing called Artificially. And Artificially is a reference site that's meant to explain how to make AI experiences accessible, and also how to hook into accessibility for like AI. So back in basically both ways, right?
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of that reference site in particular. Now, I want to talk about a little bit about, you mentioned the generative UI kind of stuff at the top there because of the design system work that I certainly do and have some experience in. And one of the things that I'm gripping with in that idea is I also agree that hyper personalized experiences, especially from an accessibility angle, are very important, right? And I think there is a real desire for that, for certainly for individuals who have those special needs, but also for, you know, this the curb cut effect where, you know, it was originally for wheelchairs, but also now for strollers and you know, hand trucks and all of this stuff, right? So I love that direction, but there's this big asterisk that is on there that I'd love to get your insight on or your opinion on, which is the filter bubble. And I say this on a couple of the different shows, but the filter bubble is basically saying, okay, now I have my own experience and it works specifically for me and it's made for me, et cetera, et cetera. If it's only within my bubble, how am I going to know, or do I even need to know what other people are doing? Because maybe the thing that the other person is doing would actually benefit me more. But if I'm in this bubble, I won't know because I only have, you know, the app that was made for me to track my workouts is only the thing that I thought of because of my limited amount of knowledge. Meanwhile, this other app, if got out of my bubble, I'd find out, oh, well, this app is way better for my needs, but I wouldn't have never known that because of the bubble. So, what do you have any opinion about that kind of like devil's advocate piece?
Yeah, I so the general consensus on the adaptive stuff right now is 80% of the page could be, should be, might be,
Hmm.
but you always have to have a percentage for the business
Okay,
because the business is always going to want to send you what they want to send you,
sure.
right? So they're never gonna, it's never gonna be 100% just you, right? Because they have to if they have something new, like, you know, there is that variable place of the business wants you to know this, but hey, you might just get turned on to something new. So you don't want to have a completely closed down experience. So I don't think, you know, you can have that hyper uh personal experience, but there'll always be a place where you're getting fed what they want to feed you.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, let's assume that, like, I mean, I don't know what Android 17 is going to do, but they claim that you're going to be able to make your own apps in Android 17 when that comes around. And I agree with you that there's, you know, there's going to be this carrot on the stick situation where the carrot is make it yourself, but the stick is, guess what? It's a subscription service, and you're locked in to whatever it is, and the business is getting a cut, right? There's always some, you know, thing that makes it so that, you know, the larger companies get like a slice of the pie, right?
Mhm.
But I'm just thinking about is like we already have self-aware, right? You were kind of already mentioning that if I or anybody else was interested in doing, you know, conversational design model behavior, to have the AI, you know, teach and make the you know, the presentation and things like that. But the thing that I guess the devil's advocate I'm feeling about that is that if I only get that slice that's there, am I missing what Anne Cantera is putting out, or Paz Perez is putting out, or or Kyle Alexander, all these folks that are doing similar work that also have really valuable information, but I'm not confident that I'm getting because I'm in this bubble, right?
But it's isn't it it's a choice to be in a bubble. Like I choose to dine of the buffet of learning from everybody I can. So I think it's a choice.
I think it might only be a choice if you're knowledgeable that you're in the bubble. See, what I attribute this to is when like search, like in Google, right? You search for something in Google, and Google will present results that it thinks you're going to like because that makes it feel like, oh, is helping me. It's the same like sycophantic thing that we might be hearing with AI
Mhm.
as well, right? So it only makes sense if you know that you're in a bubble and are aware you're in a bubble, so that you go actively to go outside of the bubble. But I'm worried about folks like, I don't know, I guess I'll put my mother in there again. My mother, who doesn't necessarily know that she's in a bubble, that she doesn't necessarily know that she's being fed things that are specifically for her and things that are, you know, that might be helpful outside, but she would never know because she doesn't know that she's being filtered on. So that's the thing
Mm,
that I'm concerned about, worried about. I don't know what the solution necessarily is for, because again, I do align with the hyper personalization thing.
yeah.
So that's the thing I'm kind of coming to grips with.
I think too, we're going to go through a phase of ethics washing.
Hmm.
Well, I think we're already there, right? We saw the head of ethics leave OpenAI this week, and other things kind of popping up that seem. But I think there will be people who leave, who demand real ethics, and a real ethical AI will make suggestions outside the bubble, right? As a conversation designer, these are things I think about. Like, yeah, it's giving you the right answer, but is it providing you above and beyond what you know, and kind of pointing you down the path of what you need? And these are all best practices we're figuring out right now. But I think one of the things that I worry about with hyper personalization is data,
Hmm.
because if I'm going to have an agent that lives on my phone and knows about me, my kids, their teachers, their preferences, their ages, their doctors, their weights, their their medical records, their finances, who owns all that? That's the
Hmm.
part I'm worried about, because hyper personal means data.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be able to say to my phone, hey, book 3 airline tickets from JFK to LAX for me and the kids, and it knows their names, their ages, I'm not comfortable with that. That's the part that really makes me think deep about hyper personalization. Like, how much data are we willing to give up freely for convenience?
Great question. Is the answer there local models? Is that just the easy answer? Is it more complicated than that?
No, well, it's knowing that you need a local model,
Okay. Yeah.
like you were saying, right? No, I think unless they make it illegal, I think local models is could be baseline for some people,
Hmm.
especially for some specific use cases, especially highly regulated. I think I have a friend who works in local model compression, and like, we're not going to need these cloud models forever. But then also we're going to come up against like the AI class warfare, where we already saw it with Fable,
Hmm.
right? Fable's expensive. It's the best one they have right now.
Hmm.
Can everybody afford it? Will everybody be? So I think we're going to go through this thing of, the most magical model out there is only going to be available to the people who can afford it.
Mm.
So that's something else. Like, as you can see, I think about this stuff as I'm falling asleep at night, because coming at this from a wildly ethical angle takes a lot of thought. And there are people who are like, nothing's ethical about it, it's all stolen. Well, you know what? I have a friend who works in the space where he's helping people who feel their IP has been stolen get money.
Yeah.
So, like, everything is just, there's just so many questions around everything. But I think for me, it's keeping my personal housekeeping is trying to stay as ethical as possible. Um, bringing the water and data center issue to people who don't know about it, right? I say this in every podcast. I'm starting to sound like one of the gun activists. Like, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Mm.
It's not the technology, it's the person using the technology. The AI for good people, and then there's like people trying to build bioweapons in their closet. So, like, as always, there's that balance of good versus evil, and we're going to see a lot of good and we're going to see a lot of evil. And that brings us to the questions around regulation.
Yeah.
And I think we need some,
We do.
without question. How many kids have committed suicide between character AI and chat, and I don't know about if Claude is in that mix, but like, we saw with social media that the government allowed the tech companies to hurt our kids year after year after year after year. And I think enough parents and teachers and doctors and nurses have seen this to be like, we're not going to let it happen this time.
Hmm.
Right? Like, we're seeing it with Meta. We're starting to see, what happened with New Mexico. Almost 900 million, I think they had to pay. And that wasn't the government that did that. That was parents and teachers and activists, right? So I really hope that we can get this under control before it starts hurting people, but it's already a little bit late for that. But it's still early enough where we should be putting in the effort and making the noise and ringing the bells preventatively before our kids start being hurt even more.
Yeah.
So it all is just, it's like a snowball of, how are we, and it's no wonder people are overwhelmed because it touches everything.
Yeah, it is absolutely touching everything. And I, I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but I know we spoke a little bit earlier about my kind of light bulb moment about what's going on, which I'm kind of associating this with addiction, right? Where or usage, like being a user, like substance user, where you can be addicted to something and not realize you have an addiction to it and be reliant on it so heavily, and seeing the this being very susceptible to children, young adults, because they're growing up and they're learning about the world, and like they find something that they like sugar, and get addicted to sugar, and that could be a very bad thing, or there's even worse things that drive them to directions that we don't want them to take. And unfortunately, some people also kind of never grow up and also become addictive to gambling, to drugs, to other kind of vices. And I would put AI as a vice, potentially, right? As something that's just like you get this dopamine hit when you get something you want out of it, that really feels good, and you want more of it. And I see folks in the industry that report about not having enough tokens this week. They use, just like you mentioned earlier, don't have the tokens, and now they feel like in withdrawal for not being able to do what they were able to do. Meanwhile, many of these people we hired before you started with AI. What happened to the job that you were doing, last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was? Like, sure, it's good to be on the wave of change, but on the flip side as well, you shouldn't be reliant on that this wave is going to continue in the way that it has continued, right? Change is the only constant, as what they say, right? So I'm just like, had that light bulb moment about the addiction piece, and now I also understand the folks that are AI adverse, where they're like straight edge. They're just like, nope, no alcohol, drugs for me. I don't want it, none of that kind of stuff. And you kind of feel like some sort of way when these people come up and say, "Oh, you're using AI? Oh, well, I don't want to be involved with you." Like it's just some kind of like disease or something.
We call them the AI vegans, and they're very similar to traditional vegans.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just don't like the feeling of that. I don't think you should be chastised for using AI, but it might be a situation where you need an intervention because you are now addicted to this thing, right? And it takes a very strong person to recognize when that happens, or it needs to be a circle that cares about the livelihood of the people around them for addiction, generally speaking. And I don't have any qualifications about addiction and how to handle addiction generally, but it's just like the um the the metaphor that I was able to land on that I think really resonates with me.
Yeah, it's wild too because I didn't believe AI psychosis was really a thing until I talked to somebody who was a genius developer, brilliant human being who's like, no, it's real. I had it. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like I thought it was just something being thrown around by the anti-AI people, but when you meet somebody who's gone through it, it's like, oh, it is real. But I think I think teaching people, about their usage is going to be like teaching people about nutrition, right? Like you can do this, you can use it, but you have to be balanced. And one of the things that personally, like I'm always I'm a person who pays attention to my own wellness and my own attention and my own habits. So what I started doing was I try to be completely screenless, at least on Sundays or 3/4 of Sundays if possible. Every night after work, I put pen to paper, I draw, I paint, I write, because I just read a study about the difference between writing with pen to paper versus typing.
Yes.
And
I think I saw it as well. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the brain is lit up like a Christmas tree when you're actually writing versus typing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm making sure at night that I'm having that that I go to the gym, I get my off screen time, I write, I paint, I do things with my hands, I bake, I play with my dogs, I go out in the garden, but it's because I have the awareness
Right.
to have myself on a regimen. So it's like, how do we create that awareness? That's the beginning of being responsible to all citizens, is teaching awareness around these things that can hurt them. Like much like the cigarette companies, right? Like, eventually everybody was aware that cigarettes were really bad for you. And if you chose, you knew what you were choosing. Right now, people don't realize what they're choosing can be so bad for them. One of the tools that I built was an AI assessment tool based on neurology and psychology and your usage, and it kind of builds a little report. It reports on, your usage, if you're abusing, areas you should pull back on, and be mindful of, especially around companionship. That's the one that worries me the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was a 14-year-old boy who thought he was in love with his AI and committed suicide, right? So, I think parents are not going to tolerate the way, like in the beginning with social media, we didn't know.
Right.
Right. This time we know. We can't not do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know if I mean, I have confidence that there's some work being done, but do you know of any organizations that are really addressing this stuff past just the lawsuits that are going against us? Is there any organizations that are just trying to bring to light the ethics of this stuff and moving forward that you know of?
Yeah, a lot of the vegans, the AI vegans, like if you Google them and follow their paths, they have a lot, like Tim New and the woman, I always forget her name. She wrote the book How Not to Use AI, which is an amazing book. So there's a whole, it's business now. There's a whole business around that now. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head any names of the organizations, but you can find the AI ethicists and just follow the trail to their programs. And I think I want them to be front and center. Like, I work in this space, but I want to work in this space without hurting people.
Right. You want this space to be healthy. Basically, you want a healthy space to be able to work in. And I think anybody really wants that, even before AI, right? You want to have a space that cultivates and is healthy. And I mean, I'm thinking about when I was working at Compass, the vibe, I'll say, or the culture was probably a better word for it. That was just a positive culture, and everybody was supporting each other, and they, would raise the issues, and we would do it maturely. And again, I think going back to the Wild Wild West and the fire that's burning right now, it's just like we're unfortunately getting burned, and we need firefighters to help put some of this stuff out before it gets too bad, maybe.
Yeah, I came up with the term "human on the hook."
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember this, but probably 3 years ago, when the chatbots first started to become generative, there was a developer who went, I think it was on the Chevy website, and he got himself a truck for $1.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So what I want to know is who's on the hook. If that guy wasn't just testing and he insisted he wanted that truck for the $1, who was responsible for that $49,999? Who's the human on the hook when your AI does things you don't want it to, or it's not supposed to? Like that's the question that keeps coming to me. And somebody told me, well, a lot of these enterprise companies, they're going to buy insurance. There's going to be AI insurance that allows the AI, it allows it so they don't have to pay it out of their pocket if their AI gives away, thousands of dollars or whatever it is. But then it makes me think of, do you remember Volkswagen getting in trouble for their cars lying about emissions?
No, I didn't know about this.
The developer who wrote the code went to jail.
Oh, really?
So I'm just trying to protect my people.
Sure.
Right. If you design this or you develop this and something happens at this big enterprise, nothing's going to happen to leadership. So for me, human on the hook is who of my people are going to get hung out to dry when things go sideways,
Hmm.
right? Because that insurance doesn't exist yet, and I'm always thinking about the community and their safety and their well-being and this like who's going to get in trouble?
Yeah.
Who's it's you know who
That reminds me of the self-driving question, right? It's basically if the car gets into an accident, who's at fault? Because if the person is in the back seat, just like on their phone, reading the book, magazine, whatever, and the car's self-driving all over the place, gets into an accident, right? God forbid, like who is on the hook for that, right?
yeah,
Who's liable for that accident? Because okay, if I own, the self-driving car, right? Okay, I own it for paying for it, but I didn't drive it, right?
right,
So
right.
am I on the hook for because I own the vehicle that it got in the accident, or is it the software that is operating this thing, right? And who owns the software that operates the vehicle? Like I actually have never done the research for that. Do you know if how that
I think
works?
that's where the first layer of this type of insurance will manifest. I
Mm,
think that's when we see the insurance for this to come to fruition. That makes the most sense for it to start there.
yeah, that makes sense.
But also, I can't help but wonder if people are able to get a truck for $1. Um, are they obligated to sell it for that $1? And whose pocket is that money coming from? That I can't help but have all these questions. Everything's so new and so early. Like there aren't necessarily best practices or answers to any of this stuff, but I can't help but think about it because it's the little guy who always ends up under the thumb of these giant orgs. And how do we protect ourselves? Because people aren't in a situation to stand up and say, I'm not building that. It's a dark pattern and I'm not building it, because they're afraid to get fired and never get hired again because people are applying to 2,000 jobs and not hearing anything.
Hmm.
So, again, it's putting our people into a corner of compliance, even though it's not something they want to do.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting a time over here. It's been, oh my goodness, like it goes so fast when you're having fun. But I want to give you the opportunity to plug anything that you have going on that you want people to know about. Any resources or anything like that. What do you have going for people?
I think voiceofai.io is where any designer trying to figure out their path to learning how to build AI products, not just AI in their workflow, is my website that I like to push people towards, just because it's free. I don't even take your email address. It's just there for you. You can grab the information from it, put it in AI and make it palatable. However you ingest knowledge in a way that's easy for you. It's all text-based. You can grab it and turn it into whatever you want. I don't care if you use it to teach other people. Like it's open source. It's there for you. I just want people to get back to being able to have jobs and not be afraid. That's what I'm pushing.
Hell yeah.
That's what I'm selling. Yeah.
No, that's a great thing to have. So, but yeah, thank you for those resources. Thank you for the chat today.
Of course.
And it's
Find me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
If you want to do something nice for me, follow me.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely follow Anne. She's got some good stuff. And well, thank you for joining the show. And before you go, please help out the show by smashing that like and subscribe button just to get notified the next time that we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation on the official Design Systems Discord by going to discord.ds.house. There's on the bottom right there. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.